debate, and then you guys can just have a nice back and forth. So we do have an official debate happening. We have Denisid, we have SocraEgg. For this debate, Denisid's taking the position that there is no reasoning that would compel him to be against same-sex marriage in our current state of the world. SocraEgg has taken the opposition. Winner will be based upon who concedes. We don't get a vocal concession from either participant. We'll put it to a voting poll in which you, the audience, can decide on who you think performed better overall in the debate. No time limit, mild moderation. Thank you both for debating. You can get started.
All right, so it's my debate proposition. So I guess I should open up with saying that I do not see any reasoning that would compel me to be against same sex marriage, but I am open to the idea that there might be some kind of reasoning. And you might have a good time convincing me if you find some kind of contradiction in my beliefs. So you can ask questions about my beliefs, or you could make an argument that something like, oh, this would compel you to be against same sex marriage because it would increase your well being, or it would be good for society in some way, and then I might find it more agreeable. So I would give it over to you, and you can actually do what you want, pretty much.
Well, okay, that's great. Thanks for that introduction. I would first start with looking at the dimensions of marriage. Dimensions are, I would say, there are three dimensions that are relevant here. One is the political dimension, pure political dimension. Then there's the contractual dimension and the ritualistic dimension. The political one and the contractual one, they can overlap. So marriage itself seems to be a contract between two people. Um, and that in and of itself, I'm for people being able to make all types of contracts, no problem there. The ritual, I don't mind people doing all types of rituals. If you want to do it in a church, if you want to do it in some other religious setting, no problem there. With any type of marriage, you can marry your dog, I don't care. In terms of contracts, you can also have contracts that, I don't know, say that you have to give your dog food or something. I don't care about that either. So now let's look at the political dimension, which is, I think, the relevant one. Namely, marriage seems to be not just a contract, but a contract that is actively subsidized by the state. There are benefits to social security, there are benefits to taxes, there are all types of benefits that you get when you're married. And the question is, because we have this one type of relationship, which is um, usually monogamous, why would people who are in a certain type of relationship, in a certain type of lifestyle, get certain benefits and others would not? So I will make the distinction between, and I will basically defend this position. Either there's only straight marriage in this political sphere, and there are some arguments for that. Or if you think that these arguments are not compelling, you must believe that marriage as a political institution must be abolished. As you can see, neither of those have same-sex marriage included. So let's take a look at what justifies marriage, right? I think that the only reason you might subsidize straight marriage, or the only reasons, would be, first of all, that it increases social stability because of natural biological mechanisms. Males tend to get insanely aggressive if they don't find mates, and monogamous marriage seems to push society towards having an equal distribution and avoiding something like the top 10% of guys doing all the fucking, so to speak, which we would have on platform, which we can see on platforms like Tinder, dating websites, where we actually see that like the bottom 90% of guys are like fighting for 10% of girls, and that can really increase social instability. The other would be children and creating a structure in which children can grow up better, for which the straight monogamous relationship seems to be the most indicated form of. And lastly, we also have this huge cultural aspect of various religions, which all seem to have this straight monogamous marriage as like a strong institution that reinforces more and more social stability. So so I would say the following: if you believe that these are not compelling reasons to give these people certain benefits that others do not have, then you must take the other side, which is that there shouldn't be any benefits. So I would actually pose the question to you, which is, why would same-sex couples get benefits from the state of social security, tax exemption, etc.? And I want you to put that into contrast with singles who have no partner, or people in polygamous relationships. Um, why would same-sex couples get that and the others not? And yeah, I will leave it to you.
Okay, you made like 3 points there, and usually I would just want to have like discussion about one point at a time.
We
So
can,
that's
no
that's
problem.
for future reference. So I'm going to try and address these points in a way in which I like. So the child factor, you could have, well, you could have like a marriage couple who decide, oh, let's be in marriage, but they don't have any children. So it's like if you want to pull subsidies from these same-sex marriages, or actually disallow same-sex marriages, then would you not also disallow marriages where there are no children?
Okay. To that, like, if you want me to respond to that immediately, or if you want to make more
Yeah,
points, I'm writing down what
I
you're
I
saying.
just want to go one point at a time, and we can
Okay.
have lots of back and forth, because I think I need your answers on this, and I am interested how you rationalize these things.
Okay. So here we do have the situation that there is the possibility that the straight couple will not have children. As we know, this can happen even if the straight couple had the plan of having children. Now, this is a fair objection against this particular point, and I will say that this is only promoting such a structure rather than literally causing it necessarily. Um, you can say that that isn't a compelling reason, and I'm fine with that. I will not necessarily defend those reasons too strongly. But I think your fundamental problem, and if you want to, we can actually focus on that a lot more here, because this is more relevant to the topic, is you need to establish a reason for same-sex marriage to exist and people to not be able to marry themselves, let's say, to get the same benefits, because we are treating married couples differently legally. So marriage isn't just people going to a church and say yes. Marriage isn't just some contract that you can make, like you can make any other contract. It is a contract that gives you all types of benefits. And why would we give them to same-sex couples? That's like the most important question.
Hold on. So at first you made 3 points, but now I'm feeling like you're abandoning those points and moving the conversation elsewhere. So do you still want me to address those 3 points, or do you want me to address what you just said?
I was just making the 3 points to illustrate that there are certain reasons that are brought forward to support straight marriage. But since my position is that there's either straight marriage or not, or marriage should not exist, and both of those entail that same-sex marriage isn't a part of this. And since your position is that there is no reason to be against same-sex marriage, um, I would say that you have to provide me with like a reason why there should be same-sex marriage, right? In the straight marriage sense, like if you believe that straight marriages should be possible, you need to give me a reason why same-sex marriages should also be possible. And from the non-existent position, you also need to give me reasons why it's possible. So it doesn't really matter. Um, Really, the burden of proof is kind of on you. If I take this either or position, I'm not defending straight marriage alone right now. That would be a different debate proposition, or that marriage should not exist. I'm just saying that I don't see reason for same-sex marriage to exist.
Okay. I hate to be like a little bit sophist here, but I worded the debate proposition in a very specific manner. So I didn't. The only claim I made was that there is no reasoning that would compel me, but now you want me to find some reasoning that would compel you to change your mind,
Oh,
and
sure. Okay, I can
that's
also
like something
rephrase this.
else.
Okay, sorry. I can also rephrase this. The reason why you would change your mind on this is that I assume you hold the value that we should not give certain people's subsidies, in other words, money from the government or benefits, unless we can really justify it. And given that you hold this, that I assume right now that you're holding this value, you can answer me if you do or not. That then you shouldn't give same-sex couples these benefits through the institution of marriage. That would be the reason why you shouldn't.
Okay, I think I can give you like an argument. So it seems like once these couples, same-sex couples, get married, they want to have children despite not being able to. So they might seek to either adopt a child or do some kind of artificial insemination and get a woman to give birth to uh, one of the couple's child, and this couple then will raise up the child, and that alone seems like something that would be compelling for a compelling reason as to why we would put some government resources, subsidization into this same-sex marriage. So it's not quite exactly the same as an opposite-sex marriage, but I see like there's some incentive as to why we might support it. So does that answer your question?
Well, I would pose the following question to you, namely, it does seem to me that there is quite some evidence that the straight monogamous marriage usually leads to better child development. It seems to be the most indicated form, like that. It seems to be the most natural form. Same-sex marriages naturally cannot produce children. They need well, something like adoption or artificial insemination. And since that is also true of the single, if we have a person who's single, they can also adopt. They can also use artificial insemination. And they're also not the indicated way to raise a child. The indicated way, the natural way seems to be mother and father. Since for the single, the exact same things are true, how do you justify, well, based on this reason alone now, giving the same-sex couple the money while not giving the single any money? The single could do the exact same thing.
Okay, so there might be a factor of two people working together produce a better environment for the child. So you can have like a single person who adopts children, but they have less time for the children. So immediately it's like it's twice as hard to raise your child. Well, depending on the context of the situation, maybe if you're like super rich and have lots of money, but those people are going to be far and few between. Whereas if you have two people who just have normal amounts of money, the normal means, they can muster up like a decent home for the child and have enough time to actually give the attention to the child that the child needs. So it doesn't, it actually seems kind of like a bad idea to give a single person incentive to, I guess, adopt children. And single people are, I suspect, much less likely to try and adopt children. They usually pair up with someone and then they have the child through artificial insemination or adoption or through, I guess, sex with someone who is the opposite sex.
Okay, you named quite a few things here. Now, I would certainly agree with you that in isolation, looking at this at isolation, two people can usually spend more time on a child. That's definitely true. I can definitely agree with that. However, nowadays usually both parents are working, so it's not like this is necessarily true for even the majority of couples out there, though I do agree a single will probably have to work a lot more. So let's grant you that point. However, there is a distinction between the single and the same-sex couple that actually favors the single, which is bullying. If say a same-sex couple has a child, there is more bullying, the child is more confused, while with the single, this confusion isn't as bad. Like they will ask where's dad or where's mom, but in the other case they are faced with a completely different situation, which they might get bullied for, or which might question their idea of things even more. And we do see statistically as well, I can post that and like look for that a little later if you like, and we can like postpone on how valid the point is if you like, that that like same-sex married children, they tend to like distance themselves from their parents later in life a lot more than with straight couples. And then there's also this aspect of likelihood that you talked about. A single isn't as likely to get children, but so aren't really necessarily same-sex people. Are they as likely to want children, or are they really less likely to get children as like a straight couple? And we have a cutoff point here as well, which we need to talk about. Um, Singles, even if I grant you that singles are the least able to take care of children, like single mother, it's preferred to have a gay couple over a single mother take care of a child. Even if I granted you that point, then still you would have to kind of establish that that's enough to get a subsidy, and that that's superior, like to like, or rather that that's enough to give a subsidy. Then of course the straight couple would especially get the subsidy since they're even better at that. But I would in that case make the argument that it's not enough yet. That the straight couple, due to it being natural and probably the best for the child, really, should be the only ones to get the subsidy, and not the same-sex couple. Why the same-sex couple? Why discriminate against the single? Really, given that there's bullying as well. By the way, that's the important part. There is this argument for the single being at least equal, if not even better, than the same-sex couple at raising the child, if we disregard time.
I don't know. It's almost like if you were to make the same argument against someone else, they might care more about the bullying. I think children bully each other for whatever reason they find anyway. So it's like just an excuse that, oh, you have, let's say, two mothers or two dads, and then they find a reason. Maybe they bully you for your skin color, and then you could make the argument that, oh, we should not support the marriage of, let's say, black people, because black people will produce children with black skin, and then these black children will get bullied because of the color of their parents' skin, and they even inherited the skin color, so it's even worse. You don't inherit the gayness, but you inherit the skin color, and you will be bullied throughout your whole life. Plus, if you ever have children, then they will also inherit that skin color. So I don't know. It feels like the implications of what you are saying are going to extend to some other things that don't sound too convincing at all. Do you agree that it's going to extend to also things like skin color if we talk about bullying?
If we talk about bullying being a negative, sure, like in a sense, if you live in a society in which your children are potentially going to get severe racism, etc., you might question yourself in where you want to live exactly, in where you want to raise your children, given that they might grow up in a racist environment. I don't know if like this racism is that bad right now in like the US, but like I'll give you an extreme example. If I had Jews in Nazi Germany and like in the 1939, uh, and they told me, hey, should we try to get pregnant here and like raise our child here? I would tell them, maybe not the best idea. But that's also if we really take this child, like if we take children to be a sufficient reason for the marriage. Is it sufficient to give people subsidies because they are creating a union in which it's a little better for children than in the single situation? Not extremely better, but just a little better. Is that fair? And I can also take the position, because I use the either or, that actually, as you've described yourself right now, these child reasons might just all fail, and like you could be bullied for almost anything. Um, and whether it's good or not cannot be determined like that as a general rule, and therefore there shouldn't be any subsidies granted, in which case we abolish marriage, including same-sex marriage. So like, I don't know, like right now I think the only reason you've really given for why the same-sex couples should marry is that it's a little better for children than with the single, which I think it can be disputed, like as a general rule. um, and other than that, what's the reason, right? Like for straight couples, I have like you would have like social stability. It's natural. It's the most natural, best environment for children. It's not just like better than single. It's the best indicated environment for the child. Um, and you have like all those religious aspects too. And for I don't know if like it's a little better than single is sufficient. Would you say that that's sufficient, or do you think that you should add some arguments to that?
I think you're setting standards on me, which the debate proposition lets me avoid. I don't think I am obligated to meet your standards because you are introducing things like the single person who marries themselves. Like the debate proposition doesn't even say that, oh, I would be against that.
I can just rephrase everything I say by adding, why would you be for this in spite of the fact that that will then constitute a discrimination against singles, which I don't think uh, you would value for not enough reasons. Like, I don't think you would say that we give a certain types of people extra money without there being sufficient reason for giving these types of people extra amount of money. But because basically, I don't know how it's like exactly in, say, the US, but in Germany, for example, if you are married, you get social security benefits, you get tax benefits. The contract itself is easier to get, and it doesn't cost as much as far as I know. Um, so like you get benefits left and right, essentially, that are monetary benefits that the singles will then have to balance out. The same thing is true for same-sex couples. The question is, despite valuing, I would say, I think you value this, especially since you gave the race example, despite valuing that people shouldn't be discriminated against based on their lifestyle, how is it justified to give same-sex couples money? Given that like the only reason you named up till now was children, they might have children, which I think is less likely in same-sex marriages than in straight marriages, and it might be a little better than for the single situation, which I think is also not really the strongest point, given that yeah, there is a lot of discrimination against gays in our society, and especially for children, especially when it comes to mothers and fathers. And like, let's face it, if you're in kindergarten or in school or anywhere, like the entire mother father thing is everywhere. Like, you're as a child, like if you're of a black family, you will at least not have a problem with having mother father and being able to integrate in that. We don't actually practice that much racism in our culture. We don't have like lots of um, like teachers teaching black people are are bad, or rather like ignoring that black people exist. We integrate that a lot more. While with gays, it's a little different. We're only slowly starting to even teach that that's fine and that that's like a lifestyle you can choose. And yeah, I don't know if it's sufficient as a reason to give them like, say, 10%, you have to pay 10% less taxes. Your social security funds go together, which is a huge benefit, at least for one of the partners.
Okay, so let's put it this way. The gays, they have protests and they have like a political movement to get married. They want this. They want it really badly. They want to have the same treatment. They feel discriminated because as opposite sex marriage happens, but they can't marry each other even though they love each other. And there doesn't seem to be the same kind of movement coming from single people. There's not like protests of single people demanding that they be able to marry themselves, and there's like no pressure for it. Uh, I will just let the gay people have what they want, and it doesn't seem like single people really want this so bad. Maybe you could make a better case for it if single people were actually protesting for getting these benefits, but they are not doing that.
Well, I would argue that that's mostly because single people tend to be completely uninformed and don't even think this through, because it's obvious that marriage as a political institution is discriminating in some sense. I mean, some people have like a vague idea. Oh my God, after they get married, oh my God, I paid so much more taxes. Now I'm finally relieved. But yeah, you're right. There are no protests, though I don't think that protests are necessarily a good reason to enact something. Like there are protests by right wingers for all types of stuff as well. Like there are all types of protests for all types of things, and I don't necessarily agree that just because there's a protest we should like give it to them. Then you talked about love marriage. Love, in my humble opinion, does not need marriage, and marriage isn't about that. Marriage, in a political sense, at least, isn't about love. It seems to me to be a way to encourage people to live a certain life because it's better politically, it's better for society. That's why we invest time in it. I don't think there's a good reason to invest time in this, invest money in this thing called love. I mean, I can love myself, I can be a narcissist, I can love multiple people. Should polygamous marriage also be fine? Should I be able to marry 30 people, 50 people, 100 people? Like you could kind of deconstruct marriage like that completely. And then you talked about same treatment and discrimination. And here's the thing. I believe if you grant them that it's discriminatory, that you have to take the position that there shouldn't be political marriage at all. Because I think the same-sex partners are, in a lot of ways, closer to the single than they are to the straight married partners. The straight married partners have like the entire nature thing going for them. They can produce children, and there is like a very strong likelihood that they will produce children thing going for them. They have the entirety of like religions that were popular in the West going for them. They have all of this stuff going for them, which the gays do not. And I think the case for same-sex marriage then becomes like comparatively, if you think that straight marriage is discriminatory, rather weak, and then the case for abolishing marriage as a whole rather strong. But wouldn't you agree with that?
Sorry, no, because I think that the opposite side marriage people, they are very unlikely to adopt because they can just have a biological child, and we have all of these children who don't have parents. They are living in some kind of adoption. Well, they, they are not living with the family, and this I think that these same-sex marriage people, they are so much like more likely to be able to adopt these children, so much more likely to adopt these children than singles are likely to adopt children. And so it kind of makes sense to just allow them to do what they want, and our society will be better for it. A child who has no parents growing up is going to be worse off than a child who has gay parents. Well, maybe people make fun of that child, but at least the child has the attention of a parent. They're not going to get it in a community like, I don't even know what they call it, like a community house where they have this caretaker who needs to take care of like 50, well, maybe not so extreme, like 20 children who don't have parents. But if you have like two adults who can give their attention to one child, then that's way better for the child. I still think that it sounds reasonable to give them the same special treatment as we give to opposite side marriage.
Okay, well, in terms of adoption, I would say that given that couples usually have to wait quite a bit, there are waiting periods, that it's not necessarily something that is like insanely hard. Like that, like there are like, I don't know, millions of children waiting, and we just need to like really push up the numbers of people who adopt. Then it could also make sense to simply promote that people take more adoptions rather than creating more same-sex couples who then adopt children. It would be better to tell people, especially because having children is also kind of a drag on the environment, etc. Telling more straight couples to do this, and I think it's better as a general rule if a straight couple gets the child rather than if a same-sex couple gets the child. And we again have to like differentiate the same-sex couple from the single. And I again don't think that this like the difference. I think that the same-sex couple and the single are closer together than like the same-sex couple and the straight couple. There's really a huge gap between the straight couple and the same-sex couple in terms of the child. Would you not agree with that?
Well, the only gap you brought into this conversation was bullying.
Between the single and the same-sex person, yeah, I said that the bullying would probably be harder under the same-sex couple, which is dragging the same-sex couple further towards the single. But I talked about the gap between the straight couple and the same-sex couple quite a bit, I would say. Namely, this entire situation of it's more natural, that it has lots of culture behind it, the mother-father thing. The straight marriage itself has other benefits for society. And the child can just be a natural product of the marriage as well. So like there's a good possibility that people will simply, just make a child. And like in terms of your adoption, what I would say is better than promoting same-sex marriage would be to say we give couples who adopt children extra money instead of like straight married couples, rather than same-sex couples, and tell them, have one child from your own genes if you really want that, and then one child that is adopted, because then you have both. You have like save one child from not having parents, and you have like one child that you would have probably only had one child anyway, since like birth rates are so low. So this to me seems like a better deal than the same-sex couple deal, in terms of just the adoption.
I don't really know if the opposite sex couples are going to want to adopt. Like some of them might adopt, but the rate of adoption, when we compare it in terms of a percentage, I think is going to be much higher with people who can't actually have biological children, and those would, well, those would be the same sex couples, right? And the same thing with single
21%.
person. The rate of adoption for single people is going to be much, much lower than the rate of adoption for two people who don't have the ability to reproduce.
So yeah, the rate of adoption is indeed higher. It's 21%. I just Googled that. It's 21%, which is 7 times higher than for straight couples. Now, of course, the amount of straight couples is also vastly higher. So even though the percentage is lower, the actual amount of people is still higher. But yeah, the rate of adoption, you're completely right. It's lower for straight people, but for same-sex people, it's like 21%. And if I had to decide between gaining 1 percentage point on the straight couple or 5 percentage points on the same-sex couples, I would pick the 1 percentage point on the straight couples because they are just vastly outnumbering the same-sex couples. So it would make more sense to me to support straight couples adopting children than it would make sense for me to promote same-sex couples adopting
Oh wait,
children.
I think I'm starting to get your argument. So we take all of all of the money that we would be putting into same-sex marriages, and instead put it into uh, opposite side, opposite sex marriage, and that would increase adoption more than the same-sex marriage produces. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, let's call it that. Let's say you get extra money if you are a straight married couple and you adopt children. You get extra money for that because you have built an environment through your marriage, through the decision to have this long-lasting monogamous relationship. You've built a really good environment for children, and since you have that, we want to subsidize you taking in adopted children rather than subsidizing a suboptimal situation like the one of the same-sex couple. Now, of course, you might say that can make some of those same-sex couples sad because they might have wanted to have children. In that case, I think it's pretty legal for them to still do this artificial insemination, to do the artificial insemination. They really insist. Though, frankly, I think it's only really good to have children if you are in this environment in which you can really raise them properly. And I think that's the straight environment is the best, and therefore should be supported, if any should be supported. Like if you want to support any environment for children, then you should support the straight environment. And if that's like the only reason for marriage, by the way, because like we're still talking about marriage ultimately, not necessarily just like child support or something.
Yeah, I'm not certain that some amount of extra money would motivate the opposite sex marriage partners to uh, want to adopt. Like they might just care about their own biological children. The reason why the same sex marriages might care about these adopted children more is because they don't have the same means to have children. So I don't know if this will actually produce a more favorable situation. I'm going to be a little bit agnostic about it, but I'm kind of leaning towards most likely it's actually going to be better for adoption if we allow these same sex marriages.
But don't you think that it's sufficient? Like, do you think that it's sufficient for marriage to exist then? Because we're not just talking about like something like child support or something. You just get benefits for adopting a child, whatever you are, single or same-sex couple or straight couple. We're really talking about marriage. And marriage does have this element of children to it. But yeah, we do have the significant difference. The straight couple is vastly more likely to reproduce, obviously. In other words, giving more people for the next generation, which can be good or bad. Um, the straight couple has this cultural aspect. The straight couple does have this biological, sociological aspect of increasing social stability. And I don't see any of that in the same-sex couple. In the same-sex couple, I can only see like this one case, this one fringe case, where we can say same-sex couples might be a little better than singles at adopting children and giving them a maybe a better life than a single. Will they give them a better life than a straight couple? I have good reasons to doubt that.
Oh,
There's just way too much evidence against that.
okay. I think I know what would convince me right now. So uh, I would be convinced if you showed me like some evidence about adopted children, children who were adopted by same-sex marriage couples, um, saying that actually I would rather be without parents than with same-sex parents, or I would take the chance of not finding an adoption home in opposite opposite sex marriage parents over having a more higher likelihood to find an adoption home in same-sex marriage parents. Like they had the experience, they've lived through this experience where they have same-sex marriage, and they could tell you, "Oh, I didn't like this. I would rather prefer this." So for them, it would be like not worth it to support this same-sex marriage. And if they say it, then I'm going to be like, oh yeah, maybe there's a point. Maybe there there is no benefit to be had from this.
All right, so I posted some stuff into debate chat. Now, this is of course only quick googling. If you really want to go through like studies upon studies, there are different ones that the evidence is a little complicated. Some try to claim that the difference is actually not as significant, but I think those are usually badly done. Anyways, so what we do see as a general rule, this might not be the same as them openly declaring I wanted to be in a straight couples marriage. I don't think we have any studies on that as far as I know. What we do have is this one that tells us distant from parents as an adolescent. And this is very interesting to me, which is for children of opposite sex parents, it's 35%. Still quite a bit, we would say. I mean, I wouldn't even have expected that. But for same-sex parents, it's 93%. So like if people are saying, I think that's based on a survey, that they are distant from their parents as an adolescent, like 93%. I mean, where's the links for these charts? I can link them. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I have a question here. So obviously, well, it's more likely that the same-sex parents adopted the child, and the opposite sex parents most likely had like a biological child. So I would not be surprised if the biological child uh, is close to the parents, and maybe the adopted child is not so close. Maybe that might explain some of the statistics that I'm looking right now, and I can't be certain why exactly, because this doesn't say this doesn't make like an distinction between adopted and biological children.
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, that this did not control for adopted children, as far as I'm aware. I can try to find something like that if you like. I mean, I just kind of jumped into this mostly from this very philosophical side, but like the real question is truly if like this adoption, like we have like what same-sex couples, they're like what percentage of the population, and then only 21% of them are adopting children at this point in time. Let's say we can increase this to like 30% or something. um Great, so we've increased it to 30%. I don't think that's much. I think what percentage of the population is like identifying as gay? 1%, 2%. The United States, out of 300 million, that would be what? Um, wait, let me make sure that I'm not gonna say something stupid right now. But I think it's like 3 million, right? So out of 3 million, then we take 20% of 3 million. Yeah, it's starting to get a little lower than we thought. And if we compare this to like now the straight couples would be like basically the rest. Of course, this is like faulty maths. We're like ignoring that parts of the 300 million are like children and all that, but you get the idea. The relations are still the same. Let me see. Out of 300 million, if we say that like 1% is free, that would be 297 million. Wait, what? And then out of those, if 21 was 3 times higher, that would be 7%, if I'm not mistaken, right? 7% of 297 million. That amounts to more than in the other case. So like, I don't know, man. I do think that supporting it for straight married people makes a lot more sense, just given the sheer volume of people we're talking about here who could adopt. Um, and like, really, we have like so many other reasons for the straight married couple to claim I can get money and you guys can't, and for the same sex people to say, listen, I'm like a little bit better at handling a child situation than the single, maybe give me money. I don't think that's sufficient. I don't think that can be justified if you're against discrimination. Let's phrase it like that. If you're against discrimination based on lifestyle, how do you justify based on solely that they might be a little better at adoption to give the same-sex couple, which in right now in 80% of cases roundabout won't have any children? How do you justify giving them money while not giving the single any money?
Well, the the justification. We've already gone through this. I feel like you already said 21% of the same-sex couples adopt, right? So that's like going to be different from the single parent. I
That's
feel
80% of people. That's like 80% of the group you're giving money to who um,
yeah,
don't have
yes,
children.
and I understand it. That they're like 1% of the population. It's going to amount to a small amount of adoptions, but then again, they are like 1%. So maybe we are not uh, putting most of our money in terms of marriage to them. So it's like a small benefit, but for small investment, you could say that it is a less efficient investment than with opposite sex couples, and it's going to be even less efficient when we do it with a single person who marries themselves. And I don't know, maybe adopts a child, but I think the cutoff is that a single person is just so much less likely to adopt children, whereas we at least have this 21%. I understand it's not as high as with opposite sex marriages, but still it's like a cutoff where we are nearing almost no adoptions, where we at least have some adoptions with same sex marriages. By the way, I didn't want to have the voice text channel influence me too much, but there is some. I saw that they are saying that there's some questioning about how reliable your statistics are. The source is obviously biased, and I'm not sure if I can actually trust the statistics that you were showing me.
Yeah, sure. Like I can. I
Or,
told you
or
like this was just a quick Google search.
I actually
So yeah, I can like we can like if you want to go for pure heavy data crunching, That's no problem. We can do that some other time. But like in terms of what the picture that you get, just like that's like around is just that. And wait a minute, I'm typing X's because of push to talk. And yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, how many? How many adoptions do you think are made by singles? Like how many in percent?
I think it might be like 2% or less. It's like I suspect what happens is they
One third.
review these people who want to adopt and say, "Oh, you're a single person. You are not qualified." They have some kind of standards, and if you fall below these standards, they don't let you do it. So if let's say you are gay but you are not married, well, they require you to be married. Maybe that's their standard, and so even but if we disallow these gay marriages, then it's going to be much more less likely that the gays will continue adopt at the rate that they do. So maybe we might want to let them keep marrying, right?
Okay,
So
so
don't fall
adoptions
below
are
the
four
standards.
percent. 4% of adoptions are made by gay people, and 1/3 of adoptions are made by singles. So it's actually the reverse. The singles are the ones who are contributing like a lot more than gays. Gays make up like 4% of adoptions. You're not going to so resolve the adopt, like even if there are like lots of children waiting. As I said before, it makes a lot more sense to support straight, just because of the sheer amount of people we're talking about, to support financially straight couples making that decision than it is to
Hold
make.
on. So, but the gays make like 1% of the population. How high a population do the singles make? So we can do the math here. It's out
No,
of
no, you're
balance
right.
right
No,
now
yes, yes,
because
that's
of
the point.
the gays being in the vast minority. The
They will be
singles are
always.
much. So maybe there is more efficiency with the gays. So if
That
you
might be
want
the
to give
case.
the money to the singles, you're going to be funding so many people. If you give the money to the gays, then you're funding a small minority of people, but getting much more efficiency for that small percentage,
I phrase it
right?
as a conditional, actually. So here's the way I would do it, right? The straight monogamous marriage has lots of benefits, social stability benefits. One is based on they have a more stable environment for the child. One is that men will are more likely to get a wife and a sexual partner, etc., leading to more social stability that way. Because you don't get the entire testosterone boom. I want to be right winger, exterminate people thing. Then on top of that, you have like the entire culture behind that. You have all types of religions behind that. You have lots of people who are offended by same-sex marriage, think it's like completely against what they believe, etc. Which is also a lot more people than even the gays themselves. And all of that together, you get like some money for that. I can see a case for that, although I don't even think it's that strong. You get some money for that, okay. And then I would say, if we want to support adoption specifically, we say if you are a straight married couple, we know that you would get biological children most likely. We give you extra money if you actually adopt children. If you use the structure that we're already enticing you to go in even further to support to support children who don't have parents to adopt them,
I'm I'm
that's
not
even better.
convinced. I'm not convinced that it's going to make them adopt much more children.
But they're
And
just more people. I mean, we're talking about like in the one instance, we're talking about what? We're talking about 4% of abortions might go up to 5. Like if we have an increase of like 20%, that's 5%, like in total, right? Like 30% of the amount goes up. That will then be 5% of adoptions, right? If we have an increase of 100% of 4%, like that would be 8% of adoptions. Even by 100%, if we double the amount of adoptions, right? then we get like 8%. If we double it, which I don't think the same-sex marriage policy will do. However, on the other hand, if we increase the amount of straight adoptions, then we won't like necessarily we won't necessarily increase the what's it called, the rate by that much, like even if it's just 1%. But because we have so many people, this 1% is going to translate into a lot more. And maybe this is even going to push like the gay adoption rate down to like 1% or even lower than that, just because we're talking about so much more people, and because we're not basing our marriage. I'm not basing my marriage argument on adoption. I'm basing my marriage argument on it's a stable union that allows for this in a way better way than anything else, and that's why it should be supported.
Okay.
If at all.
Do you think it might? Well, as you might know, the homosexuals, they have like very polygamous behavior. Do you think it would give them some additional stability if we allowed them to marry? Maybe it would lead to less sexually transmitted diseases if we incentivize them to have monogamous relationships through marriage. What do you think about stability in that sense?
I'm sure that there would be an increase in like the stability of their personal relationships as well. Definitely. However, at the same time, you might get less stability in the straight relationships because we're deconstructing this old cultural concept of marriage, and you are essentially, driving like a huge fu into the like religion's face, and religion is contributing a lot into why these marriages are stable, which we can see like religion goes down, divorces go up, like pretty damn good correlation right there. The less religious people become, the more like they become like hippie, liberal, etc.
But
The more, and you're basically destroying that even more if you legislate this way. But anyways,
sorry.
sorry, go on.
I want. Sorry for interrupting. I just want to quickly respond to your point. I don't think that the recession of religion makes people gay. So it's not causing gayness in some way. The gays will always exist and they will want to marry.
I'm not
And
saying
it's
that.
not reducing the amount of straight people who want to marry.
Oh, that is actually what is effectively happening.
Oh,
It might not
sorry.
result in less marriage, but
I
more
actually
divorce.
made a statement that I want to take back because I think it's obviously wrong. The recession of religion does seem to be reducing the amount of straight people that want to marry. So I take that back. I don't think um, that's like an incorrect statement. But the stuff about the gay people, I don't think it's reducing the amount of gay people
No, that's true.
or
I would definitely
increasing.
agree with that. But let's get this like right next to each other, right? The arguments for straight marriage are it's natural. It's like that's the most trivial one. It seems to be the best for children generally, especially because it's the most natural environment. Straight couples have a more natural interest in even having children, and a um, normal, like they introduce more of the normal things in society to the children rather than like more outside things. They're less likely to be in depression as well or suicidal, etc. Then there's an entire culture surrounding it. There's the entire aspect of taming men, so to speak, so that they don't become aggressive. um, and we have basically this list of stuff that we can use to justify that, right? If you think these reasons are invalid, that's fine to me. Because again, I said, if you think these reasons are invalid, we can also abolish it completely. That would also make sense. But now, right down here, then we have like the same-sex couple, which shares only really that well, it might be slightly better for adoption than the single. Might be. Even though singles make up more adoptions than same-sex couples. I think I read earlier that it was like 1/3. So like might be a little better environment for the child than the single if we use same-sex couples. That's like the only thing that we have going here. And we have to, and you want to direct like quite a bit of funds at this population. Like, I don't know, maybe as a general policy, if you want to support adoption that much, it would even make more sense to say, like, as a general rule, you get money for adopting a child, and maybe you could even have like hierarchy. You know, if you're like a same-sex married couple, you get the most amount because you're like you're creating the most stable environment, and like have that descent down. Although that's also kind of complicated to justify. um, in the end, I would really ask you if, like, you see that the arguments for straight marriage are like vast, and people are still saying from the same-sex marriage perspective, this is discrimination, even though there's like lots of reasons why we would, even if we said same-sex people could marry, I would still give straight people a lot more money because, well, there's a lot more stability being found here, and all of the factors we've talked about are just better in the straight couples. um, since even the same-sex couples are talking about discrimination here. If we want to get rid of discrimination and we think that these reasons are invalid for the straight couple, then I would say tear the entire house down, no marriage. And if the reasons for the straight couple are valid, I would say those are really good. There are lots of them. While for the same-sex couple, the adoption point isn't sufficient to create like marriage, social security benefits, etc. I just don't think that's enough to
Was that
justify the discrimination against singles.
okay? So was that basically your ending statement? You summed every argument up that you made.
I mean, essentially, yeah, there's like not a lot more to say from my side other than I just don't think it's sufficient to justify being discriminatory. If you believe, of course, in that, we can also talk about what, we liked to talk about implications earlier, about the implications for that. Like we could say have all types of different populations then that are better for adoption. Um, we could argue that like a polygamous relationship of like 3 same-sex couples is even superior to just the same-sex couple because they have even more time for the child. So why not support that? And why not support 4 people or 5 people? Or at what point does it become so weird? Since the point that it's an unnatural relationship situation cannot be used, we can just extend this ad infinitum. Because the only point I think that was really made was time, and there's no other point that can be really made here. You cannot make the mother-father point because that doesn't exist in a same-sex
Yeah.
marriage. Um,
Sorry,
yeah,
you are speaking a lot, but I think we can find some
sorry.
kind of middle ground. So if we were to go with the idea that let's pay some people more, some people less, and some people nothing, we could make a marriage system where white couples are paid the most amount of money because that's the ideal environment for a child to be born and grow up in. And black couples, we give less money because their children will face racism, and well, black couples are more likely to be uh, in poverty than white couples. So let's give them less money for the marriage, and let's give next in line are the same-sex marriage couples. We give them the least amount of money because they don't produce the environment that is the best. The best environment is the white couple environment, and then the last one is the single person who, let's say, gets almost no money, and that's the spectrum we use. I think you could somehow uh,
I actually want
make
to thank
that
you. That's going to collapse into into like my other position. So like this is pretty much ending it.
okay.
As you've
But
demonstrated,
I
it's
would not
absurd.
roll with it because people would be so damn angry. Like you have these gay couples protesting right now, the black couples. Sorry, but these people are going already protesting. They already feel discriminated.
No,
They are
what
burning
I mean
down
is,
cities, and it's like a bad, really bad idea. You can have it like in some sort of hypothetical, but in reality, it's not going to work. So I would not go for it. But
yeah.
in an utopian situation, then yeah, maybe. And I think this is where we get to, and you have been basically making the same arguments for some time now. I don't see that we have anything anywhere else to go other
Oh, we
than
do.
this
Just
situation. We do. So
yeah, there's one thing
let's
that
go
I
there.
can say here, namely that this is excellent. Actually, your point will just grant me the other way to make my case, which is you've just successfully demonstrated that just given the arguments that were made here, there might be some other ones out there to justify marriage, but like given the arguments that were made here that are justifying straight marriage, or even the same-sex marriage, because the only argument for same-sex marriage you had, remember, was that it's slightly better for adoption, that those are not justified, that those lead to this gradation in which we have like white couples on top, then we have black couples, etc. And so because this sounds completely absurd to us, marriage should be
Hold
abolished,
on.
therefore
So
no same-sex marriage should
the
exist.
symmetry breaker here is that single couples don't go protesting and burning down. Sorry, single people don't protest and go burning down cities. Whereas with the gay couples and with the black couples, that's going to happen. So that's the symmetry breaker. That's why I'm making a distinction. That's where I'm drawing the line.
Okay, so now your argument is essentially that the reason why we should have same-sex marriage is because otherwise we'll have protests of gays destroying property,
Well, I don't know if
being equal
they
to
turn.
marriage.
They might turn violent if you piss them off enough, but uh, that's something that that's just one thing I would consider among all of the other stuff that we talked about.
Okay, well, I would say that's kind of well, I don't think the LGBTQ community, as much as like some Antifa members might be violent sometimes, would go to the streets and destroy property or whatever and protest like that. And I think they would actually be really satisfied if we put them on equal footing with everyone by simply removing marriage. So that would basically be resolved. We could say marriage is no longer a political institution. Marriage, you can still do it at a church, but it doesn't do anything. You can still have a contract to like settle property agreements with your spouse or whatever, and contracts to like make social security contracts with other people together. That you can have those types of contracts. But we remove the entire politics from marriage, and that will resolve your gay protests and resolve all discrimination, right?
Well, that's like one path you can take the conversation, but it doesn't pertain to the debate proposition. So
How does it not pertain to
it's
it? I just gave you a reason why same-sex marriage should be abolished because all marriage should be abolished.
well, if all marriage is abolished, then I'm still like I don't care too much either way if we have no marriage or I'm like all right with both situations. One where we have no marriage and one where we allow the gays to marry. So it's like not directly. attacking my proposition, I feel like.
No, I mean, your proposition was that there is no reason. I mean, if this wasn't also a refutation, I wouldn't have entered the debate with this in mind. Like your debate proposition was there's no reason for me to be against same-sex marriage. Maybe I misinterpreted this, but one reason to be against same-sex marriage would be that marriage is just wrong and it should be abolished. So that would be like the one you might agree with now.
Okay, I think that's the strongest point you make. That let's abolish all marriage, and so sorry. So this gets again into the situation where people are going to be protesting. This time, it's going to be the people who actually care about marriage. So. In our current state of world, that's not like a realistic solution to things,
And
is
do
it
you
now?
think there is like no conservative, especially fundamentalist Christian upcry protest thing against the LGBTQ movement?
I think it's not on the same level. Like they will be a little bit upset, but they will not go on the streets marching, do they? Do we actually have marches like that?
That's a good
Because
question. I would
that
actually
that
be
would
interested in that.
that would give you a very strong point. Like you could say that, oh, what you just said was wrong, and I would have nothing to say to rebut that. I would be simply wrong.
Well, googling it just gives like one huge anti-gay marriage protest in Paris of France. That's one example, and I didn't even think that they were so anti-gay. It's fucking France.
Yeah, I'm thinking for a moment. Give me some time because I don't know. I might concede, but I'm not doing so yet. I'm thinking about it.
No problem. Take your time. And I'll just think this out quite loudly right now. Yeah, I would also like to like see the comparison between like anti-gay protests, given that we have like a lot more people that are upset by this, to like gay protests for marriage. Uh, like I would like to see what the comparison is there too. And we do, I mean, fundamentally, still we do have like a huge amount of Christians, and in my country, I'm from Germany right now. You have lots of Muslims, and Muslims are definitely not supportive of like gay marriage or anything, and their numbers are projected to increase in the future. So I don't know if that's so healthy to have.
Like if it's going to end up in some sort of violence against these homosexuals, then that would actually be a reason why I'd be compelled to. Okay, let's not provoke these Muslims. Let's find a way to uh, resolve this peacefully. But then again, that's like giving the power to the Muslims that we just go with their religion and then they start imposing these laws upon us that are from their religion. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, but that's also a good retorsio argumenti because that's actually applying to your gay protests as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like that's a point in your favor. I'm still having multiple points, or let's say I'll give it as a point in your favor, but I'll say something like, oh, I think that the child adoption is still a point in my favor. So we are sort of even. I'll say that, okay, you made a good point, but I think I am, it is not enough to actually compel me to be against same sex marriage because there are like plenty of other points that would balance it out, right?
Okay, let me quickly put this into perspective, right? We on the one hand have the point that same-sex marriages should be supported, because they will increase adoptions by a fraction, and that's a superior lifestyle for them than singles. And this is to be supported over simply supporting opposite sex couples more financially to adopt. This is actually superior technique. And this justification is fine despite the fact that if we had like some form of gradation, say like, and they should be on at the same level as straight, if they're on the same level as straight couples, then we have this like huge gap. Straight couples have tons of justifications, we talked about them: nature, social stability, culture, religion, they create children, etc., 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 versus a little better for adoption than singles. Then we have this huge gap, which I don't think is justified. If we put them like right beneath, then you talked about this gradation thing with like white and black couples, which seems to reduce this to absurdity. So to me, it seems like there are only really two options, and that's really my original position. Either we support the opposite sex marriage because that has like lots of reasons. It also seems to be better overall to increase the amount of adoption, to put stuff in there, and seems to also give them better lives, at least on a surface level. We can go into stats at some point. Either this, or we just abolish it altogether and we are done with it, and we just say marriage is a bad concept, let's get rid of it.
I wasn't convinced that it's like a superior option to take the money from the same-sex marriage and put it to opposite-sex marriage.
Okay, but I don't think we can actually make that many further points, so I think we're pretty much...
I'm thinking that we have come to the end of the debate. I think you did sow some doubt in me. Like, I'm not as certain of my current position as I was before I entered the debate. But on the other hand, I'm not fully there yet. I'm not fully agreeing with you yet. And I'm actually interested in what people who are listening would vote. And maybe from their perspective, they were convinced by your argument. So I would just put it to vote. I think you did a good job, actually, way better than I expected. So this was a really good first debate for you.
Yeah, I think your gradation point also made me think about the justifications for straight marriage and whether I shouldn't be more of an abolitionist, because I tended towards supporting straight marriage itself. But yeah, like I think this was pretty good. Let's have a vote.
Cool. Thank you both so much for debating. I always appreciate the content and you guys stepping up to even talk about these sensitive